Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslag talking about reciprocity.com, the sharing economy proofreading platform that I am trying to build. And in this particular video, I'm going to talk about how to become a more effective writer, how to become a more effective academic writer is really what I'm focused on. So I'm a professor of innovation, strategy, and entrepreneurship at a large state institution in Florida. And what I'm going to get into, this video is definitely geared towards those that are sort of senior undergraduate level to graduate students. And then finally, those that are currently a PhD, either doing their research in their particular area. And this is just kind of insights that I have learned along the way and how to actually become a better academic writer. And what do I mean by a more effective academic writer? The more effective is both being able to write a substantial amount as well as write creatively. Those are two important components to the dimension of becoming a better academic writer. I'm not perfect by any means. I haven't, learned this, and, I wish I could publish more, as we all do. I definitely wish I could do that. But there is this component here where there is both the degree of how much you write and how creative you write. Those are two important things. And it's something that we do talk about, or I do talk about, or research is, creativity, for example. So there's two components that you should think about. There is the bulwark to become a better, more effective academic writer. There is the bulwark component. This is 80% of the problem, right? So this is just sitting down, getting a lot of research out, doing a substantial amount of writing. This could be, going through and doing literature reviews, thinking about reading things, synthesizing it, putting in tables, all of that kind of stuff. That's the bulwark. That's really hard to do. Because it's hard to keep your motivation up throughout that process. It's just really tedious. And the reason why I call it bulwark is because it's hard, sort of laborious work. And that is a really big component of any academic work, right? So if you are a senior undergraduate student, you're thinking about writing a thesis, for example, you will find that the thesis, your sort of master or your undergraduate thesis, it's going to be a lot of work because you have to read all this literature and sort of put it all together. That is just bulwark. The other component is the creativity component. This is where there is some sort of novelty associated with what you're actually writing. This is the 20%. This is the hard thing, but it's often what gets you from basically like a B plus to an A plus, or going from, getting a lot of articles but getting a lot of articles in an A journal. That is the key component here to think about, is that getting into the next level. This is where your reader is going to think that they are reading along. They're like, I know this, I know this, I know this. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, that's a cool idea. I never would have thought of that. In that moment, that's where you sort of bring the reader on board, and you're like, they get really excited. So when I read a great paper, I get really excited. And then I want to invest more in it. And I'm like, this is, you did great. So here's the trick. This is what you have to think about. You have to ask the question, and then what? So and then what? You look at what everybody else has done, and this is what the literature says. And then you find this gap in the literature, and then you have to think, and then what? What is the implication of this being there? So there's a great example of this in the economics literature from years and years and years ago. Ronald Coase was talking about this, or came up with this paper that, a lot of people were thinking about how markets were really cool, because markets allow you to bring a buyer and seller together, and those buyer and sellers can get things done, and they can purchase things, and you could both get a lot of benefit from buying and selling stuff. But he was like, well, if that's the case, if everybody's saying how amazing markets are, well, how come we have firms? Why do organizations exist? It's kind of an odd situation, right? So then he started thinking, well, if that was the case, why do they exist? Well, there's got to be A, B, and C factors. Some of the things dealing with, it's tricky to get things done sometimes. Some goods don't trade very well in the marketplace, and it might trade more effectively in a firm compared to a marketplace. And that's really what the implications was. He was thinking very much in the lines of, and then what? So that's where you come up with a really cool, interesting insight that people are excited about, and that will get you into the next sort of stage, right? So if you're thinking about congestion or larger cities and congestion, you might want to not just think about larger cities leads to congestion. You might want to think about what are the implications of this congestion, right? So, and then what? What's the implications? Maybe it is people are more stressed out. Maybe they have more anxiety issues because they're sitting in their car and getting, all agile and or all anxious and stuff like that. So that's what you have to think about. Maybe they have more back problems. So then you can start thinking about, we can correlate the size of cities to people that have more back problems because they're sitting in cars more than in smaller cities. So you might want to look at that. That might be a really interesting insight to look at, right? So that is where you can do sort of clever things, and those clever things are the things that get you and get the reader on board and get them excited about what you're doing work on. So that is all I wanted to say. That is the sort of key components to becoming a better academic writer, or a more effective academic writer, I think, is the bulwark component of it. It's 80%. That's definitely a lot of work. But then thinking about the question, and then what? What is the secret? And then what? So there's all this stuff that people have said this. What is the implication of that? Where does that break down? What is the problem here, right? And then what? That is the key thing to think about all the way through. And that's where the clever insight comes from, where there's a lot of novelty that comes in. You could look at some of my old videos. I do talk about, what's interesting, how do you sort of figure out what's interesting, what's clever and stuff like that. So you could look at some older videos on how I actually talk about this and discuss these different issues. If you like this particular video, if you think it's cool, do the old thumbs up. You can also do that as well. That is totally fine. I don't mind. Appreciate everything that you do and you're following. If you're following along and you subscribe, you're so cool. And in general, I'm going to keep putting out more videos like this. I definitely like helping you all out. If there's any videos that you'd like me to put out, you could just make a comment in the comments below. But thank you so much. Have a good day. Take care. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye.